Listen up, trash. Who the hell do you think you are? Flashing fake badges, mumbling codes like a lunatic? We know your type. Black scammers. Traitors. At a rundown gas station in Mosswood, they beat and humiliated Lena Ellsworth in broad daylight. No one dared to step in, because here, being black means you're guilty first. But they had no idea she's a high-ranking general holding the key to exposing a corruption ring that could shake the Pentagon. In your state, if you're black, do they believe you or beat you first? Tuesday at noon. The sun was harsh and Mosswood was as deserted as any weekday. The gas station sat at the junction of State Route 312, and a turnoff led to a riverside neighborhood where strangers only stopped to fill up and drive on. No one lingered for more than 5 minutes. No one stayed long enough to be noticed. But today, someone wasn't in a hurry. Lena Ellsworth pulled her 2019 Ford Explorer into the station and parked neatly at pump number 3. The car doors stayed shut. The windows remained up. She wore a black fleece jacket with a thin rubber band on her left wrist, the only thing visible through the tinted glass. No local plates, no inspection sticker. The car wasn't dirty, but it wasn't new, and she didn't get out. She remained still behind the wheel, her foot resting on the brake. Her right hand opened the glove compartment and pulled out a palm-sized device, a military satellite phone. The black screen glowed green as it connected. ID code entered in 3 seconds. A secure channel opened. She needed to report on the reopened Mosswood file before someone intervened. The gas station was nearly empty. A silver SUV was fueling on the left. Its driver, a middle-aged man in a baseball cap, paid no attention to anyone. The only other vehicle was an old pickup baking under the sun. Behind its wheel sat an older white woman, Marlene Huxley, a 30-year Mosswood resident. The self-proclaimed guardian of community value, Marlene sipped from a paper coffee cup, waiting for her daughter to return from the convenience store. She scrolled her phone, not planning to notice anyone, but then her eyes passed over Lena's car and stopped. A black woman, sitting alone, not getting out, not buying anything. Dark windows, no decals. One hand appeared to hold something long and dark. No lowered gaze, no hesitation, no attempt to belong. Marlene leaned forward, tilted her head, furrowed her brow. Her gaze darkened. That feeling? Something's not right. Arose without needing proof. To Marlene, this was the type of person you couldn't trust, especially not in Mosswood. She set her coffee down, opened Facebook, tapped the live stream icon and muttered, "Black woman, not getting out of the car, looks suspicious. I think she might be a terrorist. If I disappear in the next 5 minutes, y'all know who did it." No one responded, but the live stream started. The screen blinked. Live. Her granddaughter at school might see it. A few gossip prune neighbors would see it, and those who believed vigilance meant patriotism, they'd see it too. She cracked her window slightly to let in more light, turned the camera toward Lena's vehicle and zoomed in. The phone shook faintly in her hands. A ding sounded. Someone was watching. Marlene didn't know exactly what she had just triggered. She didn't need to. She believed she had done the right thing. Lena remained unaware, still typing the final lines of code onto her screen, preparing to connect to the Department of Defense. A call that would never complete. She didn't know she was being live-streamed. The satellite phone screen reflected the faint dashboard light as encrypted strings appeared. She keyed in triple-tier credentials and unlocked the secure protocol. A warm midday breeze drifted through a cracked window, carrying dust and heat. A bead of sweat rolled down her neck and clung to her collar. Her hands didn't shake, but her breath had slowed. This call could not fail. She needed to confirm a buried report. Mosswood 2021, a missing soldier. No one asked enough questions. No one wanted the final answer. A patrol car appeared from the east, across the road. No sirens, no flashing lights. It moved slowly, like a civilian vehicle, but the emblem of Painted Ridge County Police was clear on the door. The car pulled into the station, parking at an angle behind Lena's Explorer. 2 officers stepped out, one overweight, his belly spilling over a leather belt. The other, tall, thin-shouldered, eyes squinting in the sun. Neither rushed, but their eyes scanned the lot quickly, then stopped, without hesitation, at Lena's vehicle. Marlene kept live streaming. 4 viewers now. She whispered into the camera like an actress waiting for her big scene. Order is about to be restored. Lena saw movement in her rearview mirror. She folded the satellite phone and set it on the passenger seat, unlocked the car with an electronic click, placed both hands on the wheel, the standard protocol for tactical contact. She was in civilian clothes, no rank insignia, but in her inner coat pocket was a Tier 1 military ID, enough to halt any detainment if verified properly. One of the officers knocked on her window. A sharp tap-tap echoed through the hot stillness. Lena turned, lowering the window halfway. Her voice was calm, and unlike many, she did not lower her tone, as if pleading. I am conducting secure military communications. My identity is verified on this card. She drew the ID from her inner pocket and held it up. The silver Pentagon emblem glinted under the sun. The tall officer raised an eyebrow. His eyes revealed skepticism, laced with contempt. This card looks fake. Where are you from? Fort Liberty. But that's not relevant. What matters is, answer me, did someone call you here? What are you doing? Lena didn't look away. She held his gaze. Her voice wasn't loud, but every word was clear. I just lost contact with the Department of Defense, and if you continue to obstruct me, this matter will escalate beyond both your pay grades. The overweight officer Cooper cracked his wrist lazily. Delaney, the taller one, glanced at his partner and nodded. Cooper understood. He reached back and unlatched a pair of handcuffs, speaking with near boredom. Restrainer. We'll check later. The cuffs snapped open, cold and loud like a slap in the still air. No sirens, no explanations, and no one, not even Lena, realized that metallic click would trigger a machine of power none of them had ever faced. The final click of the handcuffs locking Lena's wrists echoed. Her hands were twisted behind her, back pressed against the car, cheek resting on the hot hood. The metallic paint transferred heat directly to her skin, while gasoline fumes from pump number 4 stung her eyes. She didn't resist or moan, just clenched her jaw tightly. The crowd was small, but some began pulling out phones to record. A middle-aged man stepped back behind a gas pump, trying to hide his trembling hands. A young woman holding a water bottle paused mid-step, lowering her head to avoid the camera. Quiet laughter mixed with the scent of engine oil, dust, and scorching sunlight. Cooper, the overweight officer, held Lena's arms firmly, pinning her against the car. Delaney, tall, thin, eyes always narrowed as if scrutinizing, stood in front holding the military satellite phone seized from the passenger seat. The screen was dark, but its status light blinked faintly one last time before going out. Delaney frowned. The device was unlike any civilian phone. He tapped the screen lightly, trying to power it on. No response. Who are you calling? Delaney asked. Lena stayed silent. Department of Defense, CIA, some anti-government group? He tilted his head, narrowing his eyes. What are you doing at this gas station? Cooper snapped, voice harsh. Who do you think you are, sitting in a car holding something like a gun, mumbling codes? We know all the tricks from these insurgents. Lena opened her mouth to answer, but he slapped her hard. Then he sneered, insulting her. Black women like you are untrustworthy. You're probably planning a robbery or a scam. Let's get her to the station and follow standard procedure. Lena bit her lip, blood not spilling despite the numb pressure on her wrists. She didn't need to answer. She knew well. If the signal was cut for over 90 seconds without a terminal response, the Defense Signal Monitoring System would automatically trigger the response protocol, sending a signal to the nearest relay station. For Lena, that was Barksdale Air Force Base. She had served there. She had personally written that protocol. She raised her head, meeting Delaney's gaze. Her voice was low, steady, neither pleading nor threatening. I warned you. You just cut the wrong line. Not meant for civilians. Good luck explaining this. Delaney laughed scornfully, turning to Cooper mockingly. Who does she think she is? Probably imagines herself a spy or something, acting like she's important. Cooper laughed too. Both were used to people fabricating stories to avoid arrest. Fake documents, cold voices, the knows the law better than the lawyer type. But Lena was different. She neither begged nor humbled herself, and that annoyed them the most. Just then, the tiny satellite phone in Delaney's hand vibrated slightly. A barely noticeable jolt, but Delaney's hand twitched. The screen, thought to be off, lit up for exactly 1 second. A single message appeared, red text on black background. Connection lost. Protocol activated. Below was an internal channel code and a countdown timer. 458, 457. Delaney froze, frowning. Before he could speak, the device shut off. The status light vanished. Behind Laney's calm face was clear anticipation. She didn't need to reclaim anything. The gears were turning, and no one in Mosswood suspected. From a seemingly meaningless button press, an entire U.S. military power machine had just awoken. At the Barksdale Air Force Base Emergency Coordination Center, one of the main monitors displayed a Level 2 alert. Data flickered on a black background. Encrypted signal unverified. Communication lost. Physical verification protocol activated. A satellite map showed a red point near State Route 312 coordinates. Mosswood, Louisiana. An orange icon spun beside the personal ID code, ELL 457A. Lieutenant Colonel Xavier Brooks sprang up. No explanation needed. EL 457A was Lena Ellsworth's device ID, his direct commander during 2 Middle East campaigns and one of few with access to strategic military communication networks. If her device lost connection suddenly, it wasn't battery failure or technical error, and if the physical protocol was triggered, it meant Lena was physically obstructed, or worse. Open satellite imagery stream over Mosswood. Deploy Eagle 1 team. Prepare to move in 5 minutes, he ordered sharply, without turning. Should we notify the county police, sir? No, not yet. Lena Ellsworth is authorized to report directly to the secretary. If it escalates, the Pentagon will issue orders. Technicians began processing commands. A small group left the command center, heading to the armored vehicle staging area. They didn't need details, only knew a high-ranking commander had lost connection and immediate action was unwritten law. Meanwhile, in Mosswood, Cooper bowed his head, writing arrest notes on the car hood. His face flushed. Whether from heat or pride was unclear. Delaney opened the patrol car's back door, motioning Lena inside. She remained silent. No struggle, no reaction. Her breathing was slow, as if counting each tick of an internal clock. Marlene Huxley, the live streamer from earlier, now had nearly 200 viewers. Shares climbed steadily. One message read, "What's going on? She's doing nothing." Another, "I see a black woman sitting in a car, yet she's cuffed." But venomous comments weren't lacking. Probably spying. Black in Louisiana. That's reason enough. Who allowed her to call publicly? Cooper looked up, noticing some filming. He smirked. Drama lovers, huh? Fine. Film away. Let's see if any laws protect suspects. Delaney kept his hand on Lena's shoulder, pushing her inside, but she didn't move immediately. She looked at him one last time, not angry, not afraid, but as one memorizing a face for a final answer. In her mind, the count continued. 3 minutes left. 20 seconds gone. They're coming. Far away, no military engines roared yet. No sirens, no helicopters. But just then, a communications satellite adjusted its scan angle by 12 degrees, locking on Mosswood in enhanced observation mode. On the ground, a light armored vehicle rolled out of base. No plates, no logos, only a simple mark, Eagle 1, Silent Response Unit. Elsewhere, the machine had been activated. No one at the gas station knew that each second they stood watching was a ticking countdown toward a confrontation this town would never forget. Lena still said nothing, but in her mind, one phrase rang clear, just 5 more minutes. Lena stepped into the back seat of the patrol car, hands cuffed, collar damp with sweat, but her posture remained upright. She said nothing. No arguments, no pleas. The door slammed shut behind her with a metallic, harsh, and final sound. The seat was hard plastic, with no cushion, no seatbelt. She sat still, back straight, hands locked behind her, eyes facing forward. No excess movement, no expression that hinted at vulnerability. At that moment, a group of high school students stopped by the gas station. They were on their way home from school, dropping in to grab drinks. One of them, named Jonah, noticed the police. Then he saw the black woman handcuffed in the car. Then he saw her eyes, unlike anyone he had ever seen arrested. No tears, no bowed head, no fear. Jonah took out his phone and began filming. He didn't know exactly what he was recording, but he knew it was something the world needed to see. Delaney noticed the student raising his phone to record and frowned, but didn't intervene. He didn't see a kid as a threat. Cooper was different. He liked having an audience. He stepped back, hand raised to shield the sun, and spoke loudly as if performing for everyone at the station. "She's non-compliant. We're just following protocol. File a complaint if you want." His voice echoed across the fuel station. Some people shook their heads and walked away. Others stayed to watch. But no one stepped in. Marlene was still live streaming, though her hands trembled slightly. She was starting to sense something was off. The woman in the car said nothing. No screaming, no resistance. Marlene had imagined something different. A woman struggling, shouting, proving that calling the police had been the right thing. But everything unfolding now was causing viewers to question it. Marlene's face wrinkled as she read the comments. "Are you sure? She doesn't seem to be doing anything wrong, not yelling or fighting back. What kind of procedure is this supposed to be?" Lena remained still, eyes looking out the car window. From inside, she saw Jonah still filming, his hand a bit shaky but his gaze unwavering. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but Lena recognized something in him, a look she once had as a child, the look of someone trying to understand why silence could frighten people so deeply. To many, silence meant weakness, surrender, submission. But to Lena, silence was a strategy, not avoidance, but a way to let time take control. Because time always knows where truth stands, if you're patient enough. Outside, Cooper rechecked the citation, his eyes shifting between columns of information. He tried to look confident, as if following every trained step, but when he turned on the radio to submit the suspect's ID, the central system returned a strange message. Identity not found. Retry. He frowned, double-checked the name spelling and ID number. Retried. The same warning appeared. Then an added line, requesting transfer of verification authority, Federal Code 9XA71. Cooper shrugged. To him it was just a system glitch, a technical hiccup. He exhaled, muttering, "Damn system. Always fails when it matters." But Lena heard it clearly, and she knew it wasn't a glitch. It was the first signal of unmasking, not of her, but of a system that thought it could decide who should be cuffed and who shouldn't. She didn't need to say a word. Everything was already speaking for her. Lena closed her eyes. Her forehead rested gently against the car window. The thin glass transferred heat slowly but steadily, warming her cheek. She didn't sleep or rest. Behind those closed eyes, a stream of data flowed. Details, ID numbers, timestamps. She needed no notes. Everything related to Kareem Ellis, a private once under her command, was etched into memory like an unerasable scar. Mosswood, April 2021, Kareem was undergoing psychological treatment after the northern Syria campaign, transferred to a private medical center near a mining zone, a facility contracted to support the military. In one final communication, Kareem had sent Lena a short email, no subject, with just one line. "Something's wrong here. I don't think they're real doctors." 2 weeks later, he vanished. The file said, "Left treatment facility, has not returned." After 3 months, the Department of Defense ruled it desertion. Case closed, no further inquiry. But Lena didn't believe it, not out of emotion, but because Kareem had served in psychological operations. Trauma never leaves without a trace. They leave behind everything: voice patterns, behaviors, fears. Yet Kareem disappeared entirely, as if someone had erased all connections. That wasn't natural. A month ago, Lena received an anonymous file sent through an old internal network. Inside was a recording, a coarse male voice with a distinct Southern accent. The call requested military coordination to transfer Kareem into civilian oversight due to psychotic symptoms threatening therapeutic safety. The caller identified himself as Sergeant Cooper, Painted Ridge County Police. No warrant, no clearance code, and Kareem vanished 3 days after that call. Lena backed up the recording to a secure device. She didn't upload it to any system, knowing it would be blocked or reviewed for authenticity. She chose to go to Mosswood, officially under the guise of logistics oversight, but actually for on-ground verification. Yet her command only held weight in military zones. She needed civilian evidence, something to pull the Justice Department in, and the last two names in Kareem's file, never properly questioned, were Cooper and Delaney. Her call to the Pentagon, cut off right after confirming coordinates and requesting extended jurisdiction, was supposed to be her leverage. But now this unlawful arrest had become its own evidence. Cuffing a general officer without a warrant and disrupting a military-grade encrypted transmission constituted a grave interagency convention violation. She didn't need to act anymore. They had triggered the entire response system for her. When Lena opened her eyes, the sunlight had shifted. One arm burned red from leaning too long on the plastic seat, but she didn't adjust her posture. Jonah was still there. The student was still recording, eyes unblinking. Delaney returned, scowling, mumbling about radio interference. Cooper was on his third attempt at the call. Still no response. None of them knew that, at a secure relay station in Fort Belvoir, a signal had just been logged, local verification authority revoked, along with an order temporarily suspend Painted Ridge County Police's access to federal defense ID verification systems. They had entered a blind zone, and Eagle One response team with authority to initiate semi-strategic protocol was now less than 10 miles from Moss Wood. No sirens, no alerts, just movement. Lena didn't smile, but in her reopened eyes something was clear. They thought they had control of her. In truth, they had just handed her control of the entire game. When the message, Concomiction Lost Physical Command Processing Protocol, EL457A, appeared on the central monitor in the command room, all typing, reporting, and movement stopped instantly. Within 2 seconds, the entire Barksdale system switched from routine surveillance to Level 2 emergency mode. No sirens, no flashing lights, but everyone in the room knew something serious had just happened, and it involved someone they all respected. Lieutenant Colonel Xavier Brooks, who had been reviewing the logistics map at the tactical table, immediately looked up. He didn't need to read the entire code. The last 4 characters alone triggered his reflex like a bomb alert. ELL4457A, the personal identifier of Brigadier General Lena Ellsworth. Each high-ranking officer carried a dedicated communication device with dual-layer authentication, used only for secure or emergency contact. If a physical response protocol was activated, it meant the device holder had been forcibly restrained, or worse. Activate Eagle One. Engage the target within a 20-mile radius. Brooks' voice was crisp and unhesitating. A duty officer asked, "Colonel, do we need to confirm the location one last time?" Brooks didn't turn around. His eyes locked on the red icon blinking on the map. "No need. If the signal's down." Lena didn't pull it herself. That's not her style. The order was relayed. Eagle One, a strategic rapid response unit trained for federal incidents and high-ranking personnel protection, deployed within 3 minutes. Not frantically, but with deadly precision. They didn't need the full story, only the right name. And Lena Ellsworth, in their system, was a person who must never be touched. At the West Motor Depot, a light armored vehicle was pulled from its bay. Matte black exterior, no plates. Each vehicle was equipped with low-frequency dampers, encrypted comms, and body-worn cameras for the entire team. No sirens, no lights, no open radio channels. Eagle One didn't arrive to make noise. They came to finish the job, clean and exact. Brooks didn't wear a ceremonial uniform. He wore a standard tactical jacket, chest patch affixed but nameless. On his side, an old Glock 19, maintained at least 10 times by Lena's own hand. He wore light gloves and checked his weapon only once before stepping into the command vehicle. No wasted motion, no delay. As the hatch sealed with a heavy metallic thud, the air inside cooled. Brooks leaned slightly toward the driver, speaking just loud enough to hear. "This isn't a retrieval mission. This is a message. A general is never alone." The driver nodded. No reply, no questions, no need. The team knew. Brooks wasn't deploying out of pride. He was acting on a debt beyond rank. 3 years ago, Lena stood before the disciplinary board to prevent Brooks's expulsion from the military after a severe psychological episode. When everyone else said he was no longer fit for duty, she said only one thing: if he can still stand, he still matters. No pity, no persuasion, no charity, just one plain truth. That sentence kept him in the service, and today he would repay it, not with words, but by dragging the whole system to Mosswood, to show whoever had touched Lena that in this military, targeting the wrong person isn't a mistake. It's an end. The command vehicle led the convoy, matte black, low-slung, disturbingly quiet despite its nearly 2-ton weight. No sirens, no lights, no military tags, only a faint symbol etched on the side, an eagle in monochrome, beak touching arrowhead, the internal insignia of Eagle 1. Behind it, 3 support vehicles, rapid response and medical, encrypted comms, and perimeter control. From a distance, it looked like a high-security transport convoy, but to anyone with experience, it was clear. This was not an escort. This was an enforcement unit. Armored tires, signal jammers, independent routing systems bypassing civilian satellites. Each vehicle carried its own Pentagon lung response code. In the event of an attack, no command approval was needed. They were authorized to fire under extended self-defense protocol. This clearance was reserved solely for command-level response, and Lena Ellsworth was one of the few qualified. Brooks sat in the command bay, eyes fixed on the auxiliary screen. Lena's last signal was cut exactly 14 minutes earlier. Location: a gas station off Highway 312, near Residential Zone 7, Mosswood. Estimated population: 961. No special police unit, no military liaison post, no logical cause for disruption, unless it was interference. And Brooks knew Lena wouldn't allow herself to be cut off. If she wasn't transmitting, someone had stopped it. He zoomed in on the map, enlarging every detail around the station. Pump layout, civilian cameras, escape route angles. Nothing stood out. But it was precisely that nothing which was most dangerous. The worst deceptions always happened where no one was looking. Lena used to say that, and now she was right there. Brooks entered a secondary authentication code and reopened the internal case file on Kareem Ellis. Private, under post-traumatic treatment. Disappeared from Mosswood Medical in 2021. Official report. Left the facility voluntarily, but no one confirmed his mental state. No one reviewed the surveillance footage, and most notably, the 2 names in the report, Cooper and Delaney, were unaccompanied by any statement. They assisted the patient transfer under civilian order, yet no copy of that order existed. The case was closed after 18 days. No requests for reinvestigation. Brooks tightened his grip on the seat rail. The cold steel groove under his palm sharpened his focus. He glanced at the screen, 11:44 IEMing. If the system hadn't been tampered with, the press might have heard a federal response update in 12 minutes, and an hour later, crowds would gather. But right now, this was a sealed response zone. No press, no third parties, only his team and those who'd done wrong. If Cooper and Delaney were the remaining links in Kareem's case, then today, they wouldn't get the chance to justify themselves. The uniforms weren't arriving to escort. They were coming to prove. An officer's honor is not up for negotiation. Delaney pushed Lena into the back seat. The door slammed shut with a cold metallic sound. His reflection appeared in the thick glass, his face tense with something he couldn't name. Not anger, not exactly suspicion. More like a flicker of intuition he dared not voice, because speaking it would make it real. Lena sat still, hands cuffed behind her, her spine straight, as if standing at attention. She didn't look at anyone or speak, only repeating silently, 9XA71 Charlie Bravo, the emergency verification code for commanding officers detained outside military jurisdiction. Each mental repetition felt like a gentle knock, opening a door on the other side of the system. Cooper fumbled with the communication system. Every code entry returned an error. Unknown to them, the system had been remotely locked. The signal couldn't reach the county dispatch center because the verification line had been set to independent mode. Cooper muttered, tapping the screen lightly before turning to Delaney. "No info, probably a system fault. No one's responding. Delaney frowned, not because of the signal, but because of the calm eyes behind the glass. Not panicked or worried, but strangely composed, as if she knew exactly what was happening and was waiting for all pieces to fall into place. Annoyed, he stepped closer to Lena's window and said, "You better tell us who you really are before we search you." Lena didn't answer. She tilted her head and met his gaze, without challenge or sarcasm, just steady. A look from someone who knew her role on the chessboard and knew she wasn't on the losing square. Delaney hesitated, said nothing more, and didn't turn away. At that moment, the convenience store door opened. A woman in her 50s stepped out, wearing a beige coat, silver hair pinned back, carrying a paper bag, walking calmly. She paused upon seeing Lena cuffed. Her eyes scanned the patrol car, then settled on Lena. The look was brief but deep enough for Lena to recognize her, not a stranger, but someone who had seen her in person at a national military conference 3 years earlier in San Antonio. Lena had spoken there as the Southern Command's tactical representative. The woman had worked backstage and was the only one still addressing her as ma'am after the event, not out of protocol, but out of respect. Their eyes met for less than a second. No signals, no nods, but mutual understanding. Lena expected nothing, but the woman lowered her head and walked swiftly to her car without speaking or alerting anyone. Silence, like hundreds who've witnessed wrongs but turned away to avoid trouble. Delaney watched from afar, narrowing his eyes. "She looked at you like she knew you." Cooper, slumped on a pump bench, replied wearily, "So what? Everyone knows someone. People imagine things. We're cops, not conference organizers." Delaney said nothing, but felt a step back inside himself, not because of what Lena said, but because of what she didn't say. Her silence unsettled him. At the far edge of the station, the woman's car began to move. Just before turning out, she glanced in the rearview mirror, her eyes catching the patrol car and Lena inside, cuffed and silent. Her hand slipped from the wheel to touch the faded ID hanging on her chest, a cream-white badge with dark blue trim, worn with age. Federal Defense Conference, Staff ID 1462. Houston Division. She wasn't a stranger to officers. She had seen them strong, tired, proud, or quietly waiting backstage between meetings. But never had she seen a general in handcuffs while everyone looked away. Her car turned onto the main road. No one at the gas station knew she was quietly crying, and no one knew she was the first and only one who understood what she had just witnessed. The first sound wasn't a siren, it was silence. Sudden, unnerving, as if even the air itself braced for what was about to arrive. The midday wind paused for a beat, then dust on both sides of the road lifted, swept by the tires of the lead vehicle. Matte black paint, no license plates, no sirens, no flashing lights. The only visible marking was a faint gray eagle emblem engraved on the hood, a symbol not found in any civilian or local law enforcement registry. At 11:56 a.m., the strategic response convoy turned into the lot of the Mosswood gas station. 3 support vehicles followed, forming a wedge, not tight, but precise enough to make time in the area feel like it had slowed. The engines purred without a growl. Only the kicked-up dust split the air like parting water. Before any door opened, bystanders already sensed something was off. A teenager in a baseball cap pulled out his phone and started live streaming on TikTok with the caption, "What's happening in Mosswood?" He didn't know, but instinct told him this needed to be recorded. A voice in the background murmured, "I think that's the military." Delaney turned. Cooper shot up from the bench near the pump. Ryder instinctively stepped back. None of the 3 officers had been warned. No dispatch had notified them. No local radio. No superior command. But they all understood. This convoy required no announcement, and certainly no permission. The Gray Eagle meant one thing: strategic response, command level, priority authority. The command vehicle door opened. No loud slam, no escort stepping out first. Just one man, Lieutenant Colonel Xavier Brooks. He wore no ceremonial uniform, no golden insignia, no polished boots, soft armor, tactical pants, no visible weapon, no shield. In his hand, a single-file folder, thin, tied with a string, unnumbered. His eyes didn't scan the scene. No salutes, no questions. He didn't acknowledge any of the officers. He looked only at Lena. She was sitting in the patrol car, hands cuffed behind her. The window tint wasn't dark enough to hide her eyes. Still calm, not dazed, not screaming. Just one thing in them: recognition and readiness. Brooks walked slowly, circling the front of the police car, approaching the rear door. His gaze passed over Cooper and Delaney, not with disdain, but with the knowing of someone who already understood who they were and the fear creeping into their minds. He didn't ask for the keys. He didn't issue an order. He simply reached into his jacket, pulled out a Level 1 federal clearance badge, the kind only emergency responser officers coordinated with the Pentagon were allowed to carry. He scanned the badge over Lena's electronic handcuffs, the kind only such agencies had access to. A soft click, audible, final. Her wrists were free. No one said a word. No greetings. No inquiries. Lena slowly lowered her hands, rotated her bruised wrists without flinching. She looked at Brooks and gave a tiny nod. Not thanks, but confirmation. They both knew this wasn't a rescue. It was a reversal. The teen's live stream had 27 viewers at that moment, but within 3 minutes the video would spread across the country, and the question everyone would ask: who really held authority at that tiny gas station in Mosswood that afternoon? And more importantly, who dared cuff someone the entire system was protecting? The live stream captured the moment Lieutenant Colonel Brooks unlocked Lena's cuffs. The clip was uploaded 45 seconds later, unedited, no effects. The caption read, "Military officer arrives in Mosswood, uncuffs woman arrested by police. No one stops him." The first half of the video only showed Brooks's back, his stance firm, deliberate, and Lena slowly rising, red marks still visible on her wrists. In 10 minutes, it surpassed 30,000 views. In less than 30 minutes, it was on Twitter/X, Instagram, and reposted by regional news channels with the headline, "Military intervenes in controversial arrest in Louisiana." The county police hadn't even responded yet. All communications from Mosswood to the Central Dispatch were overwhelmed by the surge of media access. Delaney stood frozen, still holding his radio, no longer sure what to say. Cooper, flushed with a mix of fear and confusion, stammered, Wait, this is unauthorized interference. Who even are you?" Brooks turned. His face wasn't angry. It didn't need to be. Every word hit like a strike on the collapsing order they thought they held. "Lieutenant Colonel Xavier Brooks, Strategic Response Unit Eagle 1. A commanding officer is being unlawfully detained under Article 18 of the Federal Military Constitution. I am ordering the immediate withdrawal of all local forces from this site." "He didn't provide ID," Cooper protested weakly. Brooks looked at him for just 1 second. "She doesn't need to. She personally signed the training authorization for my unit. And if you need confirmation, I'll call the Secretary of Defense myself." "You won't." Every syllable crushed the last remnants of Cooper's defiance. Ryder lowered his head. Delaney looked away. A strange silence swept the gas station, not of absence, but of realization. The hierarchy had just flipped. Jonah, the teen still recording, whispered to his friend, "Did they just cuff a general?" The words were soft, but everyone heard. Like a spark, the media frenzy ignited. The first call from a local journalist to the county desk came 3 minutes after the event. Within 15 minutes, a regional TV station published an article titled, "Who Really Broke the Law in Mosswood?" A screenshot of Brooks unlocking Lena's cuffs, captured from the live stream, was shared thousands of times with the caption, "The one in cuffs was the one with power." In the image, Lena was still in plain dark clothes, no insignia, no rank, but her posture, calm gaze, and unbowed expression said enough. She didn't need a uniform to be acknowledged. Lena stepped out of the patrol car, not rushed, not angry. She adjusted her sleeve, lowered her hands, then clasped them behind her back, the standard posture of an officer at attention. But here, no one was commanding her. No one dared. She gave no statement, no justification, no words for the press. But that silence, under the noon sun at an old gas station in a forgotten town, carried farther than any press conference ever could. For the first time since the incident began, every gaze, Cooper's, Delaney's, the bystanders, the live stream viewers, turned to Lena, but not as a suspect, not as someone who didn't look like she belonged, but as the center of a new order, one where justice did not arrive in blue uniforms, but through presence, the right person, at the right time. Less than 48 hours after the hearing, Lena returned to Barksdale Base, not stopping by her office, resting, or reporting directly. Instead, she went straight to the lower-level records vault, a place rarely accessed in the military. This special archive, reclassified, required 3 layers of access: a physical key card, biometric authentication, and a real-time personal access code. No one entered here to review history. They only came when something untold needed uncovering. Lena stood before the scanner without hesitation. 3 slow, steady beeps echoed in the silence. The heavy metal door opened, releasing the scent of old paper, electronics, and file sleeves. Rows of file drawers lined the walls, each marked with a unique code. She typed K key 2021 MW. The secondary screen showed Kareem Ellis, private, missing since April 17, 2021. Status: case closed. Reason: insufficient grounds for reopening. Lena exhaled silently. She had seen this line before in 2021 when she was logistics lead at Barksdale. Back then, the case was classified as internal medical and handed to civilians. No one challenged it, no one wanted to question it, and, importantly, no one wanted a personal disappearance to disrupt military-private healthcare relations. She opened file after file. Kareem's treatment records. Diagnosed with PTSD and unstable psychological symptoms. The final note read, recommend transfer to civilian oversight due to destabilizing behavior. Signed April 13, 2021, from Oak Ridge Civilian Psychology Center to Painted Ridge Police. 2 names appeared on the receipt line: Officer Delaney and Sergeant Cooper, names that seemed incidental but had appeared before. Signing off on a file nobody mentioned again. She played the attached audio, a shortwave recording with static of a civilian officer's call. A southern male voice said, "Seems unstable, rambling, asking to see the commander. Best to transfer temporarily." The timeline ended abruptly. No record of Kareem's whereabouts after, no return to the unit, no continued treatment, just a blank, and then unlocated after 1720 on 4/17. Lena sat quietly, her gaze fixed on the far wall bearing the Army motto, honor, duty, loyalty. She once believed those words upheld the system, but now knew honor without confronting its cracks was just a mask. She would not let a case be closed without facing the truth. No orders told her to do this, but truth never needed permission. Only someone brave enough to look at a name and not turn away. On the main screen, Lena compiled the data into a timeline, reconstructing an unwanted scene: Kareem's transfer to civilian care, the temporary handover to police, Cooper's call requesting patient supervision, and finally, Kareem's missing report on April 17. Records showed Kareem left the facility, escorted by 2 officers, but no external admission documents existed. No signatures, no gate footage, no medical testimonies. A procedural segment was mysteriously blank. Lena lingered on a Mosswood police order issued post-disappearance, meant to legitimize the transfer. The PDF was proper, but had a faint, low-res line. Metadata revealed the last edit at 2017, on April 17, 3 hours after Kareem's disappearance. This was no accident. Someone had manipulated the file to cover an undocumented decision. She logged the file ID and reviewed contacts from the 2021 internal investigation. She flagged those no longer active: a relocated nurse, a retired supervisor, and a civilian witness dismissed for unverifiable identity. Back then, the system couldn't verify due to temporary contact info, but Lena now had extended access. She traced the IP to a public Wi-Fi at a Mosswood cafe, registered to Samuel J. Ellis. Standing, Lena looked distant, touching a part of the answer others ignored. She opened a secure channel to Lieutenant Colonel Xavier Brooks and sent a brief message. "You once asked where Kareem really went. I haven't forgotten. I will find out, not to close the case, but to reopen the conscience of this system." Sent. A prompt appeared. Initiate special federal investigation file. She typed, Yes. The screen confirmed. Case, LI-47 Kareem Ellis. Lead investigator, Lena Ellsworth. Status, open. Kareem Ellis wasn't just missing, he was erased and forgotten. This time, Lena would bring every erased line to light. Every silence would speak. Every misplaced period would become a question mark. 3 days after officially reopening Kareem's case file, Lena received a copy of an internal financial report from the Strategic Analysis Office. The document was thin, only 12 pages, with no sensational language or classified warnings. Yet every line reeked of something off. She skimmed the first 3 pages and saw familiar phrases: post-war psychological recovery expenses, civilian treatment transfer, temporary civilian collaboration. But on the 4th page, a name made her stop. Northbridge Minerals, Inc. It sounded like a mining company, and it was. Northbridge had no listing among licensed healthcare providers, nor was it on the Department of Defense's roster of approved post-war contractors. No medical staff records, no practice license, no federal administrative codes tied to healthcare services. Yet it appeared 4 times in the 202-0202-1 psychological recovery budget transfers. In what role? As a partner providing lodging and civilian rehabilitation support. Lena opened the internal map system to verify Northbridge's headquarters. The coordinates led to Mine Site 14, north of Mosswood, a facility declared closed since 2018 due to resource depletion. She overlaid satellite layers with road maps and felt a chill. The mine's coordinates matched exactly with the address listed for Kareem Ellis as temporary transfer for monitoring in the internal handover file. She returned to Kareem's file and turned to the transfer acknowledgement page. The signature wasn't from a doctor or medical coordinator. It was from Sergeant Cooper. A faint stamp from the Painted Ridge Police Department was on the page, alongside a scribbled note. But there was no contract number, no clinic code, no oversight standard. She entered an authorization code to access military financial transactions. Over 2 years, Northbridge received 4 small transfers, totaling $960,000.00 from the Post-Combat Recovery Fund. But instead of retaining the money, every transfer was forwarded the same day to a proxy organization, Field Bridge Recovery, a non-profit absent from all official supplier lists. She traced the organization to a man named Dr. Walter Griggs, a retired physician formerly with the Texas VA hospital, a name not prominent, but directly at the center of 3 transaction chains: Military, Northbridge, Field Bridge. She checked his current address. The result? Mosswood, Louisiana, less than 5 miles from Mine 14. She pulled state business registrations. Field Bridge was declared a non-residential community psychological recovery center, but in 2021, Griggs had filed for a temporary permit to manage civilian rehabilitation facilities, citing increased demand for veteran support. The request was approved within 36 hours. Highly irregular for a process that usually took 14 days. Lena paused. On screen were 3 names: Cooper, Northbridge, and Griggs. A cop, a mining company, and a retired doctor. 3 seemingly unrelated pieces, now interconnected under the guise of rehabilitation, but something was off. She opened the reporting interface and typed a single line: request 3-tier legal verification, medical services, fund flows, transfer authority. For the first time in years, contracts that no one had signed but were still executed were about to face accountability. Lena knew one thing: money never travels alone. It always has a guide. In the tactical analysis room, Lena ordered a retrieval of all satellite imagery over Mine 14 from March to May 2021. The dataset arrived within 45 minutes. While the resolution was too low for license plates or faces, the activity pattern was indisputable. An average of 3-5 vehicle entries per week, mostly at night, via the western side gate not shown on public maps. Lena sat before the screen, scrubbing frame by frame. Headlights flashed, doors opened, figures moved, but no name tags, no uniforms, no sign of lawful oversight. Meanwhile, the 2021 county police report still claimed Mine Site 14 has no active operations, no occupancy, and no valid contract. She cross-checked Kareem Ellis's internal records. His last message came from a military chip temporary device, not civilian, only connectable near a dedicated station. The message, dated April 15, was flagged as a disconnect signal due to receiver failure. But the content wasn't lost. They brought someone else in yesterday. No beds, no doctors. This is a camp, not a center. I think I'm being watched. Lena froze, fingers clenched on the control mouse. That wasn't a complaint. It was a cry for help, unheard, unanswered, unacted upon. And 2 days later, Kareem vanished. He dug deeper into local veteran forums. In one old post, locked from comments since 2021, an anonymous user left this message: "If anyone remembers Ellis, check level 3 bunker at Site 14. There's no ore there, but there's something that used to wear a uniform." Lena immediately requested a terrain analysis of the mine, pulling infrastructure blueprints filed between 2005-2015. The result? The level 3 bunker was the only zone built for emergency containment. Equipped with steel doors, independent ventilation, but no grid power, meaning a space that could be sealed completely, with no one knowing who was inside. She cross-referenced transfer files from that year. In the same Q2 of 2021, aside from Kareem Ellis, 3 other names appeared, all black soldiers, flagged as mental health monitoring required, and reassigned to civilian rehabilitation. Each had 3 things in common: no recorded release date, no post-transfer contact info, and all disappeared. Their names weren't on AWOL lists, not in KIA records. They were labeled temporary medical file deletion due to incomplete processing. A neat way to turn people into abandoned ID codes. Lena logged each name, each date, each coordinate. On her screen, she placed a red marker on each one, point for every lost signal, every frozen file, every moment people stopped asking questions. When she finished, the map showed 4 blood-red dots, all ending at Mine Site 14. She leaned back, hands on the desk, whispering without sound, "They're not missing. They were taken." That mine wasn't seeking resources, it was seeking those the system no longer wanted responsibility for, and buried them under the label of monitoring. No charges, no trials, no death certificates. Only one thing Lena now knew for sure. From this moment on, that mine was no longer a forgotten coordinate. It was a crime scene, and it would be unearthed. During her 15 years of service, Lena had handled thousands of military medical files, ranging from post-injury treatment reports to psychological transition records after combat. Most followed preset templates, dry and repetitive, as if each soldier's pain could be encoded into ICD codes and average recovery times. But there was one name that had stopped her, not because of noise, but because it was too silent. Mosswood. The first time Lena saw that name was in early 2021, shortly after being transferred to Barksdale as a strategic logistics advisor within the secondary analysis team. During a routine review of medical transition chains, she noticed an anomaly. 3 service members had completed treatment at frontline psychological recovery centers, then were transferred to temporary yet there were no discharge records, no reverse handover confirmations, and, notably, no signs of follow-up contact after transfer. She expanded the data search, tracing related indices. The first name to catch her eye was Private Kareem Ellis. The other 2 left few traces. No internal reports, no unit logs, only a single line: civilian transition, destination, Mosswood. 3 soldiers, same year, same treatment type, same endpoint, a coordinate, without discharge dates, final records, or additional intake requests, as if they ceased to exist in the system. Lena initially thought it was an administrative error, but her intuition warned her. When an error repeats 3 times in the same pattern, it's no longer an error. It's a pattern. That very night she typed an internal report, Priority Level 3, enough to escalate to the Regional Joint Inspection Team. The content was concise but clear. Request verification of legality and transparency regarding the civilian supervision model at Mosswood. Evidence suggests the transfer of service members without complete medical records, risk of losing control over post-treatment monitoring chains. She sent the report via encrypted mailbox, internal routing, with a read receipt request. Attached was a single sentence and a private note. If the living are lost without a trace, the system is either broken or hiding something. She waited 72 hours for a response. No one replied. On the fourth day, Lena checked the mailbox. The report had vanished. Not in the sent folder, not in drafts, not even in the system access logs. She checked the server logs. No deletion commands, no unauthorized access, but also no confirmation that the email ever existed. She asked a security technician, could the system auto-chim an unread message? He shook his head. No mechanism for that. Unless someone above you did it. A week later, she received a transfer order. No explanation. Just operational requirement adjustment. From tactical analysis to central logistics coordination. She left the office that same day. Lena said nothing. Didn't protest. Didn't make a fuss. But in her mind, one thing was etched. Some things people don't want to handle. They just want to erase. And for the first time, the name Mosswood was typed down, not as a destination, but as a warning. And though someone tried to wipe it from the system, it had printed itself into her memory indelibly. When Lena was reassigned from the tactical analysis team, she carried only a file and an unfinished question. The only person who had seen her stare at the Mosswood map that day was Corporal Jalen Ortiz, a young technician, a fresh graduate, smart, diligent, and perhaps too sincere. Jalen wasn't the type to discuss backstage politics, quiet, observant. That day, seeing Lena zoom into an administrative map marking 3 civilian supervision transition points linked to Mosswood, he stopped typing and asked quietly, "Is something wrong there, ma'am? The population is under 1,000, but they get more soldier transitions than Fort Rucker?" Lena didn't turn around. Just smiled. "I'm trying to figure that out too." Jalen asked no more, but Lena remembered his eyes, skeptical but not cynical, like someone spotting an Excel formula that didn't add up. No politics, no rebellion, just a tech soldier, thinking the system might be wrong. A week later, Jalen didn't come to the unit. No leave email, no shift replacement schedule, only a brief internal note. Absent due to family reasons. 3 months. No one questioned. New soldiers miss work. Everyone's busy. Lena found it strange. But having been transferred, she no longer had access to the old system. A month passed. Then 2. Jalen Ortiz was struck off the personnel list. The reason column read, "Voluntary resignation, no feedback. Brief, clean, and too perfect." No one in the unit received a farewell email. No one saw Jalen clear his desk. No thank you letters, no goodbyes, as if he never existed. Lena once tried sending a personal email to Jalen's usual shift notification address. It wasn't returned. But I got no reply. She called his internal number. No answer. An old personnel officer, when asked, said only, maybe he knew something he shouldn't, and wisely stayed silent. Lena couldn't sleep that night. She sat on her bed under the dim yellow light, looking at the folded old map still in her bag. She recalled the simple, innocent question, "Is something wrong there, ma'am?" A question anyone looking at the data could ask, but no one did, except Jalen. She had told herself she was cautious, that she lacked proof. Her report needed verification, but then everything vanished. The email was deleted, files moved. The only person standing beside her was also erased, without explanation. That's when Lena understood the most important truth. Sometimes the system doesn't need to threaten. It just needs to make everything and everyone quietly disappear. But this time, things were different. It was no longer 2021. Lena was no longer alone, silently writing a Priority 3 report. Now she stood at the center of a federal hearing. Eagle One's team was ready to respond within minutes. Millions had watched the video of her handcuffed and witnessed her stand up. They had tried to silence her before. They did it with Ortiz, with Kareem, and probably many others whose names she didn't know. But now she was asking the questions, and the whole country was listening. This time, they would have no chance to clean up again. The call was established at 2214 via a Level 5 secure channel, the highest encryption tier reserved for communication between Strategic Command and the Secretary of Defense. No aides, no assistants, no recordings or transcripts, only a dim command screen pulsing with encrypted code streams, breathing like a system long accustomed to decisions that must remain hidden. Lena sat upright in the special coordination room at Barksdale. The lighting had been dimmed, according to protocol. No air conditioner. No footsteps. Only the preliminary investigative report displayed on the side monitor. Satellite images of Mining Zone 14. Transaction maps tracing funds from the combat recovery budget, and disappearance logs for Kareem Ellis and 3 others whose whereabouts were unknown, all layered like an unsigned indictment. On the other end, the Secretary of Defense began, in a voice stripped of authority, replaced by the weariness of a man who had just read more than one truth he wished he hadn't. General Ellsworth, I've seen the report. You've worked thoroughly. Precisely. But you also know this case could trigger a chain reaction. I suggest you cooperate with the Military Investigation Bureau. Keep this internal. We need time to verify, to review, to maintain stability. Lena didn't respond immediately. She stood from her chair and walked toward the frosted glass panel. Outside, the night runway flickered with blue landing lights as a patrol chopper touched down. A team of soldiers rotated shifts. Disciplined, quiet, methodical. She watched them a moment, then spoke, soft but resolute. I don't need time. I need the truth. A sigh came from the other side. Not annoyed, not angry, just tired. Ellsworth, we're in a year of budget restructuring. The press tracks our every move. If this breaks, it won't stop at Mosswood. It'll unravel defense civil contracts, expose sham recovery models across the country. I'm not saying this is an easy call, but if you escalate this, the cost won't just be a few titles. Lena turned back. The glow of the monitor lit up her duty coat. No medals, no operation pins. She wore nothing but her rank, and the reason she was still standing here was the ones who pay for the ones who disappeared. Kareem Ellis, Jalen Ortiz, and the 3 soldiers no one even names, because they never got the chance to leave a final message. I understand how you feel, Lena, but we have internal channels. You should trust the system. Lena frowned. Not out of anger, but disappointment. Trust? I did. I trusted enough to file reports, send letters, and request case reopenings. And what did the system do? It reassigned me, erased my messages, made my only partner into a name no one dares mention again. A long silence followed. The secretary didn't respond right away. Maybe he was weighing options, maybe drafting a separate internal memo. But Lena didn't care. She knew one thing. This call wouldn't end with a direct order, only a preference. And when people don't dare give an order, it means they know what they want might be wrong. If I stay silent, more will disappear, Lena said calmly. And by then, I'm not sure anyone will even remember they existed. The call ended without ceremony. The screen returned to standby. Lena remained at the console, hand resting on the table. Her mind was no longer filled with numbers, but with names. Names never carved into memorial stone, yet already erased from personnel databases. And this time, silence would not be a strategic option. The call lasted 11 minutes and 37 seconds. No direct orders, no suspension notice. But Lena knew, by saying just one word, no. She had broken the quiet consensus long held among those in uniform, that some things should be kept inside to preserve what shone on the outside. But image had never been her concern. The living, the lost, and those forced into silence, that's what kept her awake. 2 hours later, the coordination office issued an internal memo. case code Lee 47, requesting confidentiality of investigative content pending full legal assessment. The language was formal, not threatening. It didn't mention Lena. It didn't discredit the report. It simply warned anyone else from speaking up. Lena read the email and shut the screen. She didn't need to reread it. The message was heartbreakingly clear. No one wanted her silenced, but neither did anyone want her voice to come too soon. Lieutenant Colonel Xavier Brooks received a copy. No call, no message asking questions. He simply replied through the secure channel with one line, "If you need me beside you when the press arrive, wear full uniform, and I'll stand behind you." Lena didn't answer. She didn't have to, because the most important thing, Brooks understood, support now didn't come in statements, but in positioning, and standing behind her wasn't about following, it meant being ready to catch her if the weight came crashing down. At that moment, inside the Pentagon, an unscheduled meeting took place in Strategy Room 4B, typically reserved for urgent domestic security briefings. No public notice, an incomplete attendee list. But the topic was unmistakable: assessing the consequences of public investigation disclosures related to irregular civilian surveillance models. A senior advisor spoke first. If Ellsworth goes public, other officers will see that as precedent. They'll think they have the right to question what we've quietly coordinated with civil systems. Another, older, spoke with quiet clarity. She's not wrong. The issue is, if she says everything, the fault won't lie with her, it'll lie with us, for letting it fester. For the first time in years, the question, protect the system or fix it, was no longer a hypothetical in strategic training manuals. It was a real political dilemma among those who knew, if you try to patch a crack by covering it with a rug, the pressure beneath will eventually blow everything apart. As for Leigh, she didn't go home, didn't take leave, didn't request a security detail. She stayed at Barksdale, worked from the tech office, ate at the mess hall with Eagle One, and reread every deposition that no one bothered to reevaluate. When asked why she didn't step out of the storm, she simply replied, "Because I never intended to back away." Some people stay silent to preserve their reputation, but Lena understood. There is something more worth preserving than reputation. It's the names of those who vanished, and the memory of them, which, if no one speaks, will vanish a second time. This time she wouldn't let that happen, and that crack, even if just a sliver, was enough to let the light in. 3 days after Lena officially submitted her investigation report to the Military Security Office in the Department of Defense, the Painted Ridge Police Department issued an internal notice. Just one line, no press conference, no public explanation. Officer Delaney suspended pending internal investigation. Delaney, the officer present at the scene who ordered Lena's handcuffing and insisted she looked suspicious and needed checking, was forced to surrender his badge and weapon and was taken off duty the same day. That morning, he entered the chief's office and signed the suspension papers with steady hands and an unreadable expression. The chief handed him the document silently, without a word. After signing, Delaney asked, "Is anyone else at the station being named?" The chief did not answer. No need. That question, and the silence that followed, made it clear to everyone in the room that Lena's case was just the tip of the iceberg. Its roots were still firmly embedded. Meanwhile, Cooper, the one who tightened Lena's cuffs, refused to cooperate with the federal investigative team. From the first day he was summoned, he appeared with his private lawyer, out of uniform. In his initial statement, Cooper wrote succinctly, "I followed procedure. The detainee was non-compliant. I did not know who she was, and at that time there was no indication she was military." His lawyer attached a statement demanding immunity from public responsibility until the official conclusion. What Cooper didn't know, or perhaps knew but couldn't control, was that the department's internal tracking records had been opened for federal investigators. Within 2 days, analysts found GPS data showing Cooper had been at Mine 14 at least 3 times in 2021, on days when transfers of soldiers labeled psychologically uncertain under certain circumstances. One of them was Kareem Ellis. Location data does not lie, nor can it be covered up by a simple denial. I did not know who she was. When these documents reached the Painted Ridge chief, he silently closed the meeting room door. No new statements. No internal measures. Only a series of internal emails were sent that evening, ordering all officers to remain silent, to refrain from personal comments about Lena Ellsworth's case, and to avoid any contact with the media in any form. The atmosphere in the station changed completely. Where once there had been voices, discussions, and mutual support, now there was silence, awkwardness, and suspicious glances over shoulders. No one knew who held the documents. Who would be named next? Who would be deemed unfit for continued service? Not because of a specific fault, but because they had gotten too close to the truth. A veteran officer whispered in the garage, "I thought I understood loyalty, but I'm not sure the system remembers what it means anymore." At the reception desk, the duty officer deflected journalists' questions with a forced smile and a mechanical nod. Inside the meeting room, the report binder was closed tight. No one dared open it. The question, "Did Delaney really err?" gradually faded into a quieter whisper. If it was an order, who was wrong? We or they? Loyalty, once the pride of the force, had become the most fragile material, cracked when people no longer distinguished between law and those who thought they were the law. The system did not collapse in a day. It only needed a small crack, and now that crack had appeared, right where it once believed itself immune to error. That afternoon, outside the Painted Ridge Police Department, the sun quietly filtered through tree branches and birds sang softly, mixed with distant car horns. But inside, everything was silent and oppressive. Lena had just finished a meeting with the federal investigative team and was preparing to leave the temporary office when a quick-moving figure approached. He wore a pristine police uniform, a young face, but eyes full of worry. His name tag read simply, J. Arnett. He stopped near Lena, glanced around as if afraid to be overheard, and spoke cautiously. "General, I was there that day. I know what they did to you was wrong. If I could—" He hesitated, clutching the report in his hands, then whispered almost inaudibly, "If I speak out, I'll lose my job. The lieutenant told me straight, if I say anything that helps you, don't come back here." Lena looked at him, not judging, not pitying, not angry, only with frankness and deep understanding. "You don't have to speak for me, but don't stay silent for them." J. Arnett nodded without another word and turned away. The way he squared his shoulders, his stiffened back, as if bearing invisible pressure, made Lena's heart ache. In a system where the young still had a conscience, but were forbidden to keep it, that was truly a sign of decay. That very night, an anonymous message arrived in the Federal Investigative Team's inbox. Attached was an unreleased internal audio file. In it, Cooper's voice was clear over a radio. "Get him in the car. He doesn't seem crazy, but the faster the better. We have someone from Northbridge waiting at the mine." The voice was urgent, decisive, and cold. Beneath the audio was an anonymous note, "Not everyone fears the truth." Truth began to seep into the system's darkest corners. It did not come with gunfire, slogans, or banners. It soaked through whispers, evasive glances, and words not yet spoken aloud. Cracks began to widen. Within the police station, young officers started doubting. Even the most stubborn, once devoted to the system to the end, couldn't help but wonder, was the loyalty they obeyed truly about justice, or merely a facade protecting undisclosed wrong? Lena understood she was not alone on this path. Though people like J. Arnett were threatened and pressured, they persisted, quietly, steadfastly, and she believed that from whispers, shy looks, and small cracks, an unstoppable eruption would one day arise. The system began to fracture, not by gunfire or bloody revolutions, but through awakening, through the voices of those once forced into silence, and through truths unearthed from the shadow. The press conference was held in the large conference room at Barksdale Airport, a familiar venue for major military events where important campaign announcements and senior command briefings had taken place. But today, the atmosphere was different, more crowded, more tense. The room was filled with hundreds of people, reporters from major media outlets, amateur journalists, security personnel, high-ranking military and civilian officials. and many curious onlookers, eager to witness the long-awaited moment. Lights shone down on the small stage, lined with neatly arranged microphones. The clicking of cameras, hurried footsteps, whispered exchanges, and beeps from recording devices made the room lively. Lena entered amidst an almost complete silence. She wore no elaborate makeup nor formal military uniform, but chose a simple white blouse and elegant black trousers, her hair neatly tied back. Her steps were slow and steady, each one marking an unshakable resolve. There was no noise, no pleading gestures, no appeals for sympathy, only sharp eyes staring straight ahead, carrying an unspoken strength, a message deeper than words. When Lena stood before the row of microphones, no one expected her to speak much. People were too familiar with long, drawn-out speeches, tragic stories, and roundabout explanations. But she didn't need to do that. She knew the room's attention well and understood that sometimes silence carried more weight than any words. The cameras started rolling. Flashbulbs popped like streaks of light in the dark. Stage lights highlighted the resolute lines on her face. A reporter asked, voice trembling with excitement and tension, "General Ellsworth, how do you feel about the recent events?" Lena nodded slowly, her gaze steady, replying calmly without a trace of bitterness or anger, "I was not humiliated yesterday. They are the ones who should be ashamed." That statement echoed through the vast space with the force of crashing waves. It was not merely a response to wrongdoing, but a steadfast declaration, a challenge to those who deliberately ignored justice and dignity. Her brief words stirred many emotions in listeners, simmering anger, deep respect, and faith in justice, based not on words, but on actions and honor. After her words, the room fell silent. No one rushed to ask more questions. Small scattered applause began, quickly growing into a chorus of sympathetic claps, as if everyone breathed easier, relieved that a genuine voice had finally risen amid the turmoil. The cameras continued capturing Lena, the black female general, standing tall and calm amid a sea of reporters' lenses, a vivid symbol of resilience. She needed no flowery speech or tears to evoke sympathy. Her mere presence, her calm gaze, spoke thousands of words. The media soon spread her image and statement everywhere. Hashtags like "Justice for Lena" and "Honor Not Humiliation" flooded social networks. She became a symbol of steadfastness, of dignity, that no injustice or prejudice could steal. For many, especially those who had endured silence, shame, or unfair treatment, Lena was not just a soldier or a general, but a living inspiration, reminding all that justice does not need to shout to be heard, and honor need not be spoken to be respected. That day, Lena stood not only for herself, but for thousands who fought not enemies outside, but prejudice, injustice, and silence within the very institutions they served. With a simple but powerful statement, she awakened hope and belief in all. Following her firm words, the press room fell into a deep silence. Not from shock, but from feeling the unspoken weight. The atmosphere became solemn as a cathedral, where fewer words mean deeper meaning than any sermon. The first soft claps sounded, cautious and gentle, then spread wide. Reporters paused their recordings, cameras slowed, and they no longer rushed with endless questions. All eyes were on Lena, not just seeing a figure before a crowd, but witnessing resilience, dignity, and an unyielding determination. The image of the black female general, standing tall in simple civilian attire with sharp eyes and rare calm, quickly spread across social media platforms. Hashtags "Justice for Lena," "Honor Not Humiliation," and "Silent Strength" trended worldwide within hours. No one needed her to recount the pain, injustice, or humiliation she had endured. Her powerful silence and straightforward words said it all. To millions worldwide, Lena was not just a soldier or commander, but a symbol of silent strength, steadfastness, and justice that doesn't need to shout to be heard. For those whose voices were once silenced, buried in the shadows of injustice and prejudice, Lena's image shone like a bright torch, a symbol not only of the fight for truth, but of faith in dignity and justice. That day, Lena didn't just stand at the podium. She represented thousands, fighting not enemies outside, but the prejudices, injustices, and silences within their own ranks. With a simple yet powerful statement, she rekindled hope and faith in all forgotten souls. From that moment, Lena was no longer an ordinary general. She became the voice of the voiceless, a symbol for those who choose to stand by their own dignity. No shouting, no begging. Her words echoed not only in the press room, but in the hearts of all. I was not humiliated yesterday. They are the ones who should be ashamed. A quiet afternoon followed several tense days at the Mosswood gas station. In a secluded corner of the small beverage counter, a young employee named Kim was cleaning an old coffee machine. The dim yellow light filtered through the glass door, casting faint streaks onto the worn wooden table. Kim had just finished his afternoon shift and was preparing to tidy up when suddenly he heard a voice from the bar area. Marlene Huxley, the older white woman who had live-streamed her earlier discriminatory remarks, was speaking to some customers. Unlike normal conversations, Marlene's voice this time was full of sarcasm, bitterness, and clearly sharp prejudice. Although Kim didn't want to get involved in pointless trouble, he quietly pulled his phone from his pocket. A sudden thought flashed. Maybe this is something people need to know. Without letting anyone notice, Kim started recording a video. In the clip, Marlene didn't just repeat the deep-seated biases she had voiced in her livestream before. She escalated with harsher words. "Those black people, they're always suspicious," she said casually with a mocking tone. "They don't belong here. If they want safety, they should stay where they belong." Her words went beyond discrimination. They incited, building an invisible wall between the legitimate and the outsiders. Kim glanced around once more to ensure no one was watching, then kept filming, trying to capture her words as clearly as possible. Marlene's cynical remarks about security and people who can't be trusted flowed as if normal, but were shocking against the backdrop of Lena's arrest, a black female general that had yet to settle. After a few minutes, Kim stopped recording, sighed, and quickly looked toward Marlene, who was now ignoring everyone scrolling on her phone. Knowing the video could stir trouble, Marlene hastily deleted her social media account, as if wiping away all traces. But Kim had already sent the secret clip to a local journalist, closely following the Mosswood case. The reporter, experienced in exposing sensitive social issues, immediately recognized the clip's weight. It didn't take long before the video was prepped for release across platforms, introduced with a compelling lead, irrefutable words, "The truth about prejudice and racial discrimination in a small town." Once the clip surfaced, public reaction was fierce. Many were outraged by Marlene's discrimination and hostile attitude, while others began questioning Mosswood's social realities and the silent injustices beneath its peaceful surface. The clip became a small fire, illuminating dark corners many had deliberately ignored. Human rights activists quickly shared the video widely, calling for attention from social organizations and authorities. Articles, comments, and reaction videos flooded social media, creating a wave of support for Lena Ellsworth and those unfairly treated. Under mounting pressure, Mosswood authorities could no longer ignore the issue. An internal investigation was launched, including a review of Marlene's behavior and attitudes. However, some locals defended Marlene, citing freedom of speech and community protection. This division sparked fierce debates over the boundaries between freedom and social responsibility, individual rights and collective rights. Meanwhile, Lena and her investigative team grew more determined. The clip was not only evidence of bias, but also a source of strength to persist in exposing the truth. Lena understood this fight was not just for her own justice, but to change a system long silent before suppressed voices. Under the yellow light of the coordination office, Lena watched the clip again, deeply feeling that this was only the first step. Truth, no matter how hidden, cannot be forgotten forever. When light shines into darkness, injustice must retreat. Within less than an hour after the clip's release, it rapidly spread across social media platforms. Marlene Huxley's discriminatory and inflammatory words sparked widespread outrage. Thousands shared, commented, and expressed indignation online. The community not only spoke up to defend Lena Ellsworth, but also condemned the ongoing racial discrimination still present, even dominating seemingly peaceful places like Mosswood. Soon after, regional media began covering the story. Reporters contacted local residents, seeking feedback about Marlene's attitude and the events at the gas station. They reported, analyzed, and interviewed many to reveal the persistent prejudice silently existing in society. The story heated up when civil rights groups and social organizations quickly spoke out, using the clip as undeniable proof of deeply rooted racism, even in small, overlooked communities. They urged authorities to take decisive action, not only to protect Lena, but also to change outdated mindsets harming the community. Pressure from public opinion forced Mosswood police to respond. They issued an official statement announcing an investigation into Marlene's statements and the entire incident involving Lena Ellsworth's arrest. Police promised strict handling if wrongdoing was found, affirming their stance against discrimination and protection of civil rights. However, Mosswood's social divide grew clearer than ever. A faction of mostly conservative locals defended Marlene, claiming she exercised free speech and acted to protect community security. They argued the issue was exaggerated and Lena was the one disrupting social order. These voices deepened tensions, splitting society between those demanding justice and conservatives wanting the status quo. Amid this social conflict, Lena and her team stood firm. Instead of retreating, they strengthened their resolve to bring justice and truth to light. Lena knew exposing the truth was just the beginning. More importantly, it must be defended against forces trying to silence, cover up, and block change. She and her team continuously worked with social groups, lawyers, journalists, and communities to maintain pressure and steer public opinion. They understood change couldn't rely on a single clip or legal victory alone, but on persistent struggle against a deeply ingrained and systemic bias. Under Mosswood's shimmering yellow nightlights, Lena sat at her desk, reading supportive messages and comments from everywhere. She knew the journey ahead was long, but at least this time, the truth had found a voice, and that voice would not be easily silenced again. It took Barksdale's Legal Affairs Division 3 days to recheck all data related to Kareem Ellis, not just military records but also civilian facilities previously linked to him. Nothing notable appeared in the official systems: missing person logs, transfer reports, treatment records. All ended with the same familiar phrase, unverified. But it was one seemingly unrelated document. Workplace Incident Report Note 47, MWD, archived by the Louisiana Department of Labor, that became the final puzzle piece. A dull administrative file, not marked urgent, never queried. It contained only a short note. An unidentified individual, male, black, approximately 20-25 years old, died from a fall at Mining Site 14, April 2021. No next of kin identified. Processed as non-designated. There was no mention of Kareem's name, no photo, no military ID number. But the time, age, physical description, and especially the location all matched. Lena requested a biometric fingerprint comparison using the military system. She entered a command-level authorization code and submitted a secondary DNA verification. Less than 24 hours later, the result came back: 99.96% match to Kareem Ellis. There was no doubt anymore. Kareem hadn't gone missing. He was dead. But he had died as unidentified. No death notice sent to his unit, no military burial, no compensation record. Just a single line buried in an unread document, processed as non-designated. Lena sat in silence in the records room, staring at the faded scan of the original file. She wondered, how many words does it take for a person to vanish? 10 lines? 5? Or just one? She requested all records related to Kareem's family. The system showed they had filed a formal petition for reinvestigation with 2 entities, the Military Inspector's Office, Region 8, and the Louisiana Department of Veterans Affairs. Reason: unusual disappearance of kin, evidence of improper procedural handling. The petition was 2 pages long, typed, and written by Kareem's mother, Naomi Ellis. In it, she wrote, "My son is not a deserter. He promised he'd come home for the new year. He wrote letters regularly, said his recovery was going well. Why is no one accountable when he vanished from the map?" The petition was rejected. Reason: insufficient grounds to establish procedural violation, no clear administrative liability, no specific agency accused. The family received only a reply letter, no handwritten signature, just a stamped sentence. Case closed. Lena held the printed copy of that letter. The paper was yellowing, ink at the bottom smudged. Maybe from sweat, maybe from tears, but it still existed, a trace of someone who tried to find her son in a system where no one wanted to answer. He placed the letter next to the biometric match report. For the first time in 3 years, the 2 fragments, an anonymous death and a forgotten soldier, were reunited by the simplest thing, the willingness to look again. And this time, no one could erase Kareem's name from the record, not because of an order from above, not because of media pressure, but because someone had typed that name again and hit send. No intermediaries, no clearance required. Just one person who believed that every silenced life deserves to have its name written properly. The small town, about an hour's drive from Shreveport, lay still under a gray afternoon sky. Only 2 streetlights lit the main road. The laundromat had closed early. The sole diner displayed a sign, "No more fried chicken." Lena arrived at 1712. No military plates, no uniform, just a slim file wrapped in brown paper, sealed. Naomi Ellis's house stood at the end of the block. Low tin roof, small yard, peeling white fence. On the front door hung a wooden framed photo. Kareem in his graduation uniform, holding his cap, smiling shyly. A photo preserved but never updated, as if time in that house had stopped the moment it was taken. Lena knocked 3 times. No barking dog, no TV noise, only the slow shuffle of fabric slippers. Naomi opened the door looking straight at Lena. No suspicion, no tears, no need for introductions. She simply nodded and said, "I knew he didn't run away. I just didn't have the power to make anyone prove it." Lena didn't know what to say. She simply handed over the file, a certified DNA match, red-stamped, with an internal federal investigation code. No cause of death, no final investigation report, no explanation as to why it had taken nearly 3 years to rewrite a name. Naomi didn't cry. Her hands didn't shake. She placed the file on the old wooden table, then gently adjusted the silk scarf on her shoulder. The edges were frayed, but it was clean and carried the scent of laundry detergent. She spoke slowly, her voice softer than the ceiling fan. "General, I don't need anyone to apologize. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for medals. I just need to know my son hasn't been forgotten and that they don't do this to anyone else again." Lena sat down. She didn't know where to begin. In 15 years of service, she had signed death notices, bowed to next of kin, witnessed battlefields, bodies, and turned down countless petitions for posthumous recognition, but she had never faced a mother like this, a woman who didn't ask for justice but for memory. Naomi retrieved a plastic box from the cabinet, opened the lid, and took out 3 old letters handwritten by Kareem during treatment. The handwriting was firm, folded with care. He wrote about his unit, his therapy, and missing home-cooked meals. In the last letter, he wrote, "Mom, I'm about to be transferred closer to home. Some small town, Mosswood. Sounds quiet, but I'll call soon." He never called again. With the documents Lena brought, the case the family once filed, rejected for insufficient investigative basis, would now be reopened. No longer a personal civil complaint. No longer a lonely petition buried among bureaucratic replies. The case was now recoded in the system as Active Cooper Federal Investigation. The officer who signed off on procedural clearance, Sergeant Cooper, would be summoned. The one who intervened in the Labor Department's database to delete the incident report was being tracked via the login IP. From now on, Kareem's file would no longer sit in the unverified pile. Lena left the house. At 18:00 dusk had begun to fall. When she turned back, she saw Naomi sitting by the doorway, not watching her leave, just holding Kareem's photo in her lap. Lena didn't bow, didn't say sorry, she simply nodded, like a promise that didn't need words. Because some mothers don't ask for justice. They ask for the one thing the system once denied them, to remember their child by his real name. An emergency meeting was convened at 9:00 p.m. in Washington, D.C., inside a soundproof room on the third floor of the Department of Justice. 12 people sat around the table, representatives from the military, federal investigators, and the legal team of the Attorney General. No microphones, no live stream, just documents, people, and a freshly approved report titled simply, Expansion of the Mosswood Investigation, Evidence of Civil-Military Collusion. Leading the inquiry was Agatha Fenn, a black woman with 2 decades of experience in military oversight. She was the first to speak. This is no longer a localized incident, this is structural, a model designed to evade military accountability through civilian administrative channels. The room fell silent. On the screen, a map appeared with 9 red markers, 9 towns across Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, where Resource Line had operated. All 9 shared similar traits: deep extraction zones, proximity to minor military bases, and unusually high rates of service members recorded as discharged for personal reasons. In the past 7 years, Agatha pointed to the numbers, we documented 47 cases of personnel whose status changed from active duty to early discharge, all within 30 days of being near a Resource Line operation. 32 of them had medical documents citing psychological or musculoskeletal trauma, yet none received military standard support. A legal advisor asked softly, "Do we have any direct links?" Agatha didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned to the next page. 3 signed reports of off-duty accidents, each bearing Cooper's signature. One case stood out. Marcus Dean, a logistics soldier from Fort Hollery, listed as missing under unclear circumstances in 2021. His family had petitioned for an investigation, but it was denied due to lack of criminal suspicion. And this is footage from Mosswood, recorded yesterday, Agatha said as she pressed play. The screen showed Lena being handcuffed. She didn't resist, didn't yell. She spoke once. "I am Major General Lena Ellsworth, United States Army. If you proceed, the consequences will be on you." Her voice was calm, measured, cut off by Delaney's mocking laugh. An internal intelligence officer glanced down and nodded. "With what we have, this warrants a full-scale investigation. If proven, it's a low-profile but systemic manipulation, where corporate gain and local authority collude to push vulnerable soldiers outside legal protection." The final speaker in the room was the Military Inspector General's representative. He didn't pose a question, just a quiet statement. "We were wrong to assume Mosswood was the end. Turns out, it was only the first thread pulled." At Barksdale, Lena didn't sleep that night. She sat in her old office, reviewing the 2021 case file, one she'd tried to retain before being reassigned. In the dim desk lamp glow, she rewrote the full sequence from memory, not for submission, but remembrance. "Injustice never starts with handcuffs," she wrote. "It starts with the silence of those who knew and assumed nothing would change." The next morning, a national broadcast announced, "We are conducting a federal investigation into several police departments and private companies suspected of colluding to falsify military records, including in Mosswood, Louisiana. This is no longer an isolated incident." Immediately, the Mosswood Police Department shut down temporarily. The station chief refused all press contact. Several officers were suspended, but the 2 most mentioned, Cooper and Delaney, were nowhere to be found. According to locals, Cooper had left town at dawn, gone deer hunting. someone joked, but no one laughed. Simultaneously, the Department of Defense authorized the formation of an independent cross-agency task force led by Chief Inspector Benjamin Cross, a former intelligence officer known for internal investigations after the Kandahar abuse scandal. Benjamin is black. He dislikes interviews and detests excuses. On his first day in Louisiana, he brought only one question: why must those who once fought for their country fight again just to be seen as victims? In Mosswood, the air shifted. Those who once stayed silent began to whisper. Mrs. Liza, a retired nurse, recalled seeing Soldier Marcus Dean with a leg wound, but the medical file later vanished. A former technician at Resource Line revealed they were instructed not to interfere if uniforms appeared near the site, as it was outside civilian jurisdiction. Each story dropped like stones rolling off a hillside. At Barksdale, Lena did not appear before the cameras. Instead, she worked with the investigative team, providing all her memos, withheld medical records, and maps of locations marked with unexplained incidents. One counterintelligence specialist was stunned by how much she had preserved. How did you keep all of this? Lena replied simply, because I didn't forget, and I knew one day someone would need to remember. She took no pride in being proven right, no satisfaction in seeing the officer who cuffed her go into hiding. Her only concern: the wall had cracked, and people were starting to see it. In a small cafe in downtown Mosswood, a college student opened an old laptop and replayed the video of Lena's arrest. There was one moment, just a few seconds, when she turned to the phone camera and held her gaze. Not afraid, not bowed, just silent, as if asking, "What will you do when you're next?" The video was re-uploaded with a new title: "No One Escapes Forever, Not Even the System." Lena informed no one. Early that morning, she left Barksdale Base, driving alone along the old farm trail in Lincoln County. A light mist hung in the air. Rows of pine trees stood still on both sides. No escort, no uniform. No badge, only a small bouquet of white flowers on the passenger seat and an old, worn file clipped with a stretched rubber band. The house she came to was hidden behind thick trees beside a small, unnamed river. It had no number or sign. The iron gate silently stood open, as if its owner had anticipated Lena's arrival. She turned off the engine and sat quietly for a moment, looking through the windshield. The sun was rising, but its light had yet to warm the cold scene. Lorraine Dean lived here, 68 years old, a former military nurse who retired early after her husband's death, living alone since her Sergeant Marcus D. and disappeared on a vague mission in 2021. No funeral, no remains. Only a cold printed letter, no further verification possible. Lena stepped out, carrying the flowers and file. The wooden door opened before she touched the bell. Lorraine stood at the threshold, holding a kitchen towel, eyes fixed straight ahead. No surprise, no smile, no questions about who she was. Lena nodded lightly, and Lorraine pointed to a wooden chair on the porch. They sat. Two women, one wearing rank, the other bearing invisible wounds, both knowing this conversation needed no formality. "You know his name?" Lorraine asked after minutes of silence, voice neither loud nor cold, but filled with emptiness. "His name is Marcus Dean," Lena answered, eyes steady, no evasion. "I served alongside him briefly. After the incident, I tried to push for reopening the investigation. You're the first from the government to dare say that name since 2021. Lena pulled from her pocket a prepared file, laying it on the table. Photos of the abandoned mine where Marcus was assigned, interrupted reports, the last recorded route map, and a report signed by two Mosswood police officers, Cooper and Delaney, all stamped unverified or closed. Lorraine didn't touch them. Instead, she pulled from her coat pocket an old photo, its corner torn. Marcus in uniform, muddy-faced, smiling brightly among comrades, taken before he left training camp. "He once thought he'd serve until he couldn't walk anymore," she whispered. Lena lowered her head. She knew well, in those cold office files, Marcus was just a code. Enlistment date, fitness results, soldier ID, lost contact date. But here, to this woman, Marcus was a lifetime's memory of a mother. "Have you ever received any of his personal belongings?" Lena asked. Lorraine shook her head softly. "No, not even the boots he wore. People said they couldn't find the body. But I know when a soldier isn't returned, it's not because they're missing. It's because someone chose to forget them." A river breeze fluttered the open file. A page lifted and fell onto the wooden floor. Lena picked it up and closed it by hand. No need to persuade, no need to justify. She wasn't here to prove right or wrong, but to say something no one had told Lorraine in 3 years. "I believe he was never treated fairly, and I won't let that continue." For the first time during their talk, Lorraine looked Lena straight in the eyes. She said nothing, but her gaze had changed. Softer, yet heavier with pain. The river wind grew chilly. The sun's harshness softened, casting dappled light through leaves onto the porch floor. Lena sat quietly, hands clasped, eyes following the gentle ripples far away. Lorraine poured water into an old glass, her hands trembling but steady. "All right, now they say there will be compensation," she suddenly said without preamble. "The media called asking if I'd appear on TV. Someone in Washington sent an invitation for me to speak about a soldier's sacrifice. They call it an honor lost." Lena was silent. The phrase honor lost sounded familiar, but coming from a mother's lips, turned bitterly ironic. "I don't need money," Lorraine continued, eyes never leaving the river. "I don't need an audience. I only want one thing." She paused, weighing whether to ask, then spoke plainly, without hesitation. "You said you worked with him. So tell me, do you know if my son ever fought as someone who mattered?" Lena didn't answer immediately. The question wasn't long, but wasn't in any report, file, or verifiable data. It existed only between people, those who remember and those who choose to forget. She looked down at her hands, then up again, her voice soft, almost speaking to herself and Lorraine at once. "We don't measure a soldier's worth by rank. We see them through ID numbers, tests, and training scores. We're used to working without emotion. But," she paused, "sometimes we forget whose son they are. A father's, a friend's, someone who makes a mother wait endlessly without knowing why." Lorraine didn't cry or reply, but leaned slightly forward, taking a deep breath, as if holding back a part of herself from slipping into an abyss of emotion. Lena stood, no reason to stay longer. She took a business card from her pocket, placed it on the table beside the unopened file. "If you want to restore Marcus's name to official military records, I'll stand with you, not out of duty, but for memory." Lorraine looked up. For the first time, she saw Lena not as a system representative, but as someone who also suffered loss, someone who understood that some questions don't demand answers, only the courage to listen. As Lena left the porch, the sun was dipping behind the river's edge. The winding dirt road led back to a world of orders and reports, but no one there knew that that morning a mother had reclaimed the one thing she needed, a name spoken aloud. 3 days after the Mosswood incident, Lieutenant Colonel Xavier Brooks was called back to Barksdale Base. There was no reprimand letter, no suspension order. Just an internal summons for a field response review meeting in Situation Room 3, a room with soundproof walls, a 10-seat glass table, and a 24/7 covert surveillance system, usually reserved for coordinating multinational combat operations, but today it was about a gas station in Louisiana. Brooks arrived on time, no documents, no aid. His seat was set 2 ranks below that of the Army Command representative. 7 people were in the room. 6 wore high-ranking uniforms. The 7th was a legal representative from the Military Security Agency, silent behind a laptop for the first 10 minutes. The first to speak was Brigadier General Wallace, who had met Brooks once at a regional security seminar. His tone was mild, almost cordial. "Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel, for your swift response. Your team kept the situation under control. No injuries, no physical damage. Most importantly, no media accessed the scene before internal affairs intervened." Brooks remained silent. Wallace continued, "But you understand, this incident caused unnecessary noise. It escalated a procedural arrest into a systemic racial discrimination issue. We must protect the force's image. So, best to end it here. A nearby officer, Colonel Ellison from Operations Command, flipped through a thick file but skimmed quickly. Early pages contained gas station diagrams and Eagle One's movement maps. Brooks noticed the later pages made no mention of Corrine Ellis, no lines at all, as if the name never existed. When Wallace finished, silence fell. All eyes turned to Brooks, awaiting his reaction, but he didn't rush to reply. Hands clasped, eyes forward, neither bowed nor raised, a different silence, not agreement or defiance, but contemplation. A step back to see the full picture. A nearby young officer leaned in and whispered just loud enough for Brooks, "They want you to pause, talking to the press, not forever, just for now, until things settle." Brooks turned slowly, with no smile. His voice was calm, like a decision sealed. "I've never spoken to the press, and that's why this went this far." The room fell silent, not from loudness but truth. If Brooks had spoken earlier, if Corrine Ellis had been mentioned sooner, if someone brave had exposed Mosswood 2 years ago, perhaps Lena wouldn't have been handcuffed, a general wouldn't wait until Friday for public support, and Brooks wouldn't be here listening to others discuss dousing the flames instead of tracing their source. He leaned on the table, slowly stood, no gun drawn, no pounding fists, no challenge. He said simply, "If silence is what the military expects, you've called the wrong man." Then he turned and walked out, leaving 7 people too stunned to even write accurate minutes. That night, Barksdale Base was quiet. Administrative buildings had their lights off early. The senior officers' quarters saw no visitors. Only one room glowed, the personal office of Lieutenant Colonel Xavier Brooks. He sat at a wooden desk, laptop closed. In front of him was a pristine white sheet, carefully folded. In the top left corner, a formal heading, Early Discharge Request. According to Clause 42B, Voluntary Section, no one asked him to do this. No one forced him to leave. But after this morning's meeting, Brooks knew he no longer stood in the middle, either stay silent or leave the system to speak the truth. There was no third option. He wrote each line carefully in black ink, missing no word. In the reason section, he wrote one sentence: "I have fulfilled my duty with honor. The rest I will fulfill with truth." No more. No explanations, no excuses. He folded the letter, placed it in a thick, sealed envelope, handwriting on the front. To Military Personnel Coordination Office, open upon direct presence. Then he donned his civilian jacket and walked out. He carried nothing except a black USB on a lanyard, the one he had always kept since the Corrine Ellis incident. It held nothing dangerous. On his way back to the barracks, he passed the training field where a few soldiers still jogged. Some recognized him and saluted reflexively. Brooks nodded gently, but didn't stop. He didn't want anyone to feel they were saluting a man about to leave the organization. In truth, it was the opposite. He left not because he no longer trusted the organization, but because he couldn't forgive those who exploited it to bury the truth. That night he sat alone in his backyard. Cold coffee, no music, no TV, just faint sounds of insects and wind. In his mind echoed old conversations, talks in trenches, brief laughs between gunfire, and a female voice clearer than any, telling him in 2020, when he thought he was worthless, honor is not something awarded with medals. Honor is standing up at the right moment, even when no one supports you. The next morning, the personnel office opened at 7 a.m. Brooks's discharge request lay neatly on the secretary's desk, uncreased and pristine. At the same time, the Federal Dispatch newsroom received an anonymous email titled, "You asked why no one ever spoke up from inside. Here is why." No signature, no verification source. But attached was an internal recording related to Corrine Ellis, an unpublished excerpt with metadata proving the person accessing the case was not a victim, but someone still alive who left the military today. Lieutenant Colonel Xavier Brooks chose not to rebel. He chose to break the wall of silence, to speak for those no longer able to. And from that moment on, he was no longer a silent soldier. He was a witness. Washington, D.C., 3 weeks after the Mosswood incident. At 9:00 a.m., a special hearing titled Law Enforcement Procedures in Autonomous Residential Zones, a Case Study from Mosswood, officially commenced in Hearing Room 6 of the Congressional Complex. It wasn't a noisy session, no protests outside, no line of jostling reporters. But it was on the priority watch list of 3 major media networks and streamed internally through the Federal Enforcement Secure Network. The air inside was cold. Chairs were spaced exactly 1.2 meters apart. Presiding over the hearing was Senator Helen Ward, a tough figure in the judiciary bloc, known for her quote, "Law is the foundation. Misapplying the law is tearing down that foundation with your own hands." On her desk, a file binder was marked with red index tabs, on-site footage, Officer Delaney's testimony, the internal handling report from Painted Ridge County, and one confidential file tagged ILL 457A, Class B clearance only. Lena Ellsworth arrived 20 minutes before the hearing began. She sat in the second row. No assistant, no media representative. Her formal military uniform was minimalist with no campaign medals. She didn't sit stiffly, but there was no looseness either. Hands lightly clasped, eyes fixed on the dais, no scanning glances. Her calm presence didn't reassure. It unsettled those who knew her. The cabinet representative opened. "We acknowledge the military's professional response. No shots fired, no casualties. But General Ellsworth, we'd like to know why you didn't use internal coordination channels to report the incident. If you had, this might never have reached the public." Lena tilted her head slightly, like a breath. "I followed protocol to the final minute, but the protocol was interrupted, not by me." Another member cut in, clearly annoyed by her brief reply. "So you're saying the handcuffing created the incident?" Lena's expression didn't change. The act of forcibly interrupting military communications triggered an automatic response from command. The incident wasn't created, it was exposed. In that moment, the room leaned subtly toward Lena. No one interrupted. No one banged a gavel. No, "if I may," or "let me clarify." There was nothing to clarify. Every word she spoke, precise, cold, measured, rendered everything else unnecessary. A younger commissioner, seeking reconciliation, asked, "If there's one thing you want this committee to acknowledge, what would it be?" Lena simply said, "I'm not asking for an apology. I'm not asking for anyone to be fired. I'm not asking for my honor to be restored. I'm here to confirm what happened is real, and now the system must decide whether it dares admit that." Chairwoman Ward didn't interrupt. She closed the binder and nodded slightly. "You'll have time for a formal statement, but if I may say one thing, there are witnesses who don't need to testify. They just need to show up. And today, I believe you've done exactly that." No applause, no tissues pulled out, but from the only camera angle allowed to record, the lens slowly zoomed in on Lena's face. And it became clear silence wasn't the cost. It was how the truth echoed loudest. But when called to the podium, Lena rose without hesitation. She brought no papers, no prepared speech. Her uniform still crisp, her steps neither forceful nor light, just exact. Each stride forward brought the room closer to something everyone knew, but few dared to say aloud. At the stand, Lena stood tall. She didn't adjust the mic. She didn't bow. She nodded to Chairwoman Ward, then looked directly at the Judiciary Committee. The overhead lights cast a cold glow on the podium. For several seconds, no one spoke. No one counted. Then she began. "I'm not here to recount what I went through." Her voice wasn't loud or stiff, but every word landed like a scalpel. Precise, unapologetic. "Because you already have the data, footage, reports, and review documents, you know I didn't resist. You also know they had no warrant. The question isn't whether it happened, the question is how could it happen, even after I provided identification, military clearance, and warned about the classified nature of the call." Some committee members shifted in their seats. One opened a pen and jotted a note. Another simply stared. unblinking. Lena's gaze moved to the back row, where representatives from Painted Ridge Law Enforcement and a federal law enforcement association sat. I'm not anti-police. I've served alongside them in combat zones. I once pulled a police sergeant from a flipped vehicle after an ambush in Fallujah. I've trained in urban operations next to SWAT. I don't deny their role, but I need to be clear. Police are not the law. They are authorized to enforce the law. That difference is not semantics, it's the boundary of power. A pause. Lena didn't sigh, didn't emphasize. She let the words settle like water into dry ground. When enforcers believe they are the law, they allow themselves to rise above it. They don't need evidence, only instinct. They don't need protocol, only suspicion. And so the law ceases to be a code and becomes the shadow of fear, a shadow cast upon those who can't shield themselves with business cards, ranks, or uniforms. She looked to the far end of the room. One police representative caught her eye, then looked down. Lena didn't smile, didn't scold, but her gaze asked a silent question. If I weren't a general, would I still be alive to stand here? I'm standing here not because I'm special, but because someone recorded the footage. Someone shared it. Someone, just one person, believed this shouldn't be silenced. And if I don't speak today, someone else will be handcuffed in silence tomorrow, and next time, maybe no one will be there to record. Chairwoman Ward tilted her head slightly. A nearby advisor scribbled quickly in a notebook. Lena ended with a single sentence, not to close her speech, but to open a responsibility. Justice doesn't lie in the weapon. It lies in the hand that holds it, and in the choice not to pull the trigger at the wrong moment. Then she stepped down. No one clapped. No one rushed forward, but every gaze followed her back. And for the first time during the hearing, no one asked, "Is it true?" The only question left was, what will we do now that we know it is? Barksdale Base held a quiet memorial on Saturday morning. No announcements, no ceremony, no official honors. It wasn't for a campaign, not to commemorate a battle, and it wasn't on the military calendar. It bore a modest name: Memorial for Previously Unlisted Service Members. But everyone present understood this was how the system closed the Mosswood chapter, not with statements, but with one final, silent, orderly act. The eastern flag lawn was chosen. 2 rows of chairs faced each other, about 20 on each side. No stage, no podium, no assigned speakers. At the center stood a simple wooden frame, holding a large photo of Kareem Ellis in summer uniform. Gaze forward, lips firm, a first-year enlistment photo. Light from the left made his badge glint. Beneath the frame, a small bronze plaque read, "No one left behind, not in records, not in memory." Lena arrived late. She wasn't specially invited and didn't announce herself. As others were already seated, she quietly entered from the back, choosing to stand near an old oak tree marked with a small flag, her hands behind her back, her eyes fixed on Kareem's photo. No one spoke. Some recognized her, but no greetings, no whispers. Her presence, timely, rightful, unranked, made clear she came not as an officer, but as memory. A logistics officer walked the grounds, handing out printed lists. No names were read aloud. Each person quietly read the names of service members once marked missing during post-deployment recovery, never officially declared dead. Some had been found, some misclassified, some are simply lost in records. Now, all were formally acknowledged, properly, and with dignity. The memorial began with a minute of silence. No bugles, no speeches, just stillness. The flag rustled faintly, as if the forgotten names were breathing with time. Then came the roll call, slowly, one name at a time, no ranks, no units. Each name is followed by a 2-second pause. When Kareem Ellis was read, the reader's voice lowered slightly. Lena didn't cry, but her fingers tightened behind her back, knuckles white. She needed no sympathy. Only she knew this was the first time Kareem was called properly, not as a deserter, but as a soldier who served till the end. After the last name, no one left immediately. Some saluted. Others bowed their heads. No one waved. No one spoke. Yet something spread in that stillness, a kind of justice, delayed, quiet, but real. Lena stood still, part of that closing act. She didn't need her name called, only Kareem's, correctly. As the final guests left, a few paused by his photo. One touched the plaque. Another gently grazed the flag. The ceremony ended not with a trumpet, but with the silent agreement of those who had served, lost, and understood. Some deaths need no explanation, but they must be acknowledged. Lena stayed. She didn't move toward the photo again. She didn't know why she hadn't left. Something still felt unfinished, like a breath unspoken, a hand unheld, a truth unspoken. Then, as the chairs emptied and the wind shifted west, she turned and saw the boy. He stood at the edge of the lawn near the maintenance garage, not hiding, not stepping forward, just standing, as if he'd been there the whole time, waiting for this moment. He looked about 12 or 13, thin, long legs, faded hoodie, shoulders slightly slumped, worn shoes. But what stopped Lena was his white t-shirt beneath the hoodie, a black and white image of her stepping out of the police car at Mosswood, hands cuffed, head high, eyes firm. Below the photo, she stood, so now I can. Lena walked slowly toward him, not showy, each step reverent, toward something sacred. She stopped a few feet away. "You're Kareem Ellis's son, aren't you?" she asked, soft but certain. The boy nodded. Calm, not shy, not defiant. "Mom couldn't come, but I thought, if Dad trusted you, I should see if this was real." Lena bent slightly. She didn't ask more, didn't pat his head. She simply held out her hand, palm open. The boy looked at it, then at her face. After a brief pause, he placed his hand in hers. Light, thin, but warm. "Your dad's not forgotten," Lena said, "and you don't have to stand at the back forever." The boy looked at her, brows slightly furrowed, not from emotion but from something deeper, understanding that he wasn't replacing someone but continuing them. No photo was taken, no words recorded, but for Lena, no trial, verdict, or hearing ever felt as complete. Not an end to grief, but to denial. She rose, released his hand, nodded, and walked away. She didn't look back. The boy didn't follow, but she could feel his gaze, not hesitant but firm, not needing guidance. A small figure in a shirt bearing her image stood beneath the softening sky, saying what the ceremony could not. "If you didn't fall, then I'll stand. Without orders, without a line, I'll stand. Because I have the right to live in truth. Justice, once it touches memory, needs no applause to endure. It only needs one person to stand so that another can rise after them." Less than a week after the federal hearing, Lena Ellsworth's name became a national focal point. She made no public statements, yet every media outlet portrayed her as a new symbol, the woman who was handcuffed but unyielding, the general who needed no uniform to be heard. Articles called her the woman who severed wrongful power with silence, the general of the new century, and an icon impossible to manufacture. Through fame came fast and inescapably. Top universities sent a flood of invitations, some to teach leadership, others to share experiences overcoming discrimination, restoring honor, and inspiring others. Television studios vied to acquire rights to her story. Some proposed limited series, others political documentaries. Everyone wanted a piece of Lena, either to honor or possess her. She declined everything. No TV appearances, no interviews, no blog posts, no social media statements. No post-ament talks, no memoirs, no publishing contracts, no labels allowed, neither victim, hero, nor winner. Lena remained silent but did not disappear. She returned to base on a rainy Monday, unseen by any reporter. No escort, no welcome party. Only a handbag, a syllabus, and a class registration form. No one waited for HR, and she needed no one waiting. At Westfield Military Academy, her alma mater from 20 years prior, Lena applied to teach again. The subject she chose was neither tactics, training, nor weapons. She proposed a course, ethics, and exercising and using strategic power, an unglamorous, difficult topic few dared address because it required the teacher to have stood at the brink and refused to cross wrongful boundaries. Initially, each class had only 22 students. They didn't know what they would study, nor who their new instructor was. The classroom had no cameras, no digital boards, no internal live streams, only chalkboards, wooden desks, and a casually dressed woman who entered, placed her materials on the desk, then wrote the first line on the board. Power is not to be held. Power is to be self-limited. Some in the military whispered she had withdrawn with dignity. Others called it media avoidance. But those who fought alongside her, like Lieutenant Colonel Xavier Brooks, understood. This was not retreat. This was a deliberate return to where she was needed most. No photos marked her return to the classroom. No honorary guest badges. No reserved front-row seats. Yet one thing young students noticed after the first lesson, that woman did not need a stage to teach about honor. She sought no recognition, but made everyone wonder, do I have enough silence at the right moments, enough resolve in the right places, to be that kind of person? And so she began again, not from glory, but from the question the system had never answered. When in power, do you hold it to secure your position or to uphold the truth? At the end of the second-floor corridor, in the East Faculty Wing of Westfield Military Academy, where walls honor commanders who left marks in its history, a new framed photo was quietly hung. No inauguration ceremony, no spotlight, no mention in student newsletters, just a modest black wooden frame with anti-glare glass, placed humbly between two faded older photos. No one publicly claimed to have hung the photo. No administrative decision was issued. No academy official confirmed approval, but that morning, as cadets passed by en route to class, the photo was there, a presence. Unannounced, yet untouched. The photo captured a candid moment from the Mosswood event. A slightly shaky angled shot, unclear lighting, yet every detail of expression clear. A dark-skinned woman in dark civilian clothes. Hands cuffed behind her back, standing tall. Chin up, gaze forward, calm, unafraid. No rank insignia, no medals. No identifiers revealing who she was. Only one line, etched in metal beneath the frame. She did not lower her eyes. No signature for the phrase, yet none deny its truth. No one gives the same answer, and perhaps no single right answer exists, because precisely this ambiguity, unnamed, unmedaled, unaffiliated, makes the photo a lesson. One student wrote in a final essay, "We are taught tactics, honor, loyalty. But only walking past that photo each day did I realize some victories need no armies, no blood, no shouts. Only standing tall when all around try to force you down." Lena never approached the photo. She did not need to. She knew it existed and knew this. When a symbol is erected not to glorify but to remind, it is best left to live exactly as placed, quiet, unchanging. She continued teaching weekly, chalk in left hand, calling students randomly by seat number, ending each lesson with the same phrase, "Don't just learn to win, learn not to betray yourself when standing alone." Passing the hallway, some students bowed. Others just watched. No one dared ask, "Are you the woman in the photo?" They didn't need to know, because they had seen clearly, not everyone in the military needs applause. Some, by simply not lowering their gaze, make the next generation look up. The story of Lena Ellsworth is not just about one brave individual standing against injustice and racism. It is a profound lesson for all of us. Not to judge others hastily based on superficial biases. Misjudgments can harm individuals and fracture the very foundations of society. Lena proved that true talent and human worth cannot be overshadowed by prejudice or narrow views. Despite humiliation, she maintained her dignity and persistently fought with truth and steadfastness. Her story clearly shows that justice will find a way to prevail, even when delayed or obstructed by bias and power. From this inspiring personal story, we draw a greater, deeply human and social message. Everyone deserves fair recognition and judgment, regardless of race, gender, or any other factor. Only then can society be truly fair, progressive, and sustainably developed. Have you ever been misjudged because someone didn't understand you? Have you been underestimated or dismissed, yet quietly proven yourself more capable than imagined? If so, Lena's story may resonate with you, reminding you that you are not alone. Share this story to encourage reflection and learning. Only by raising our voices and acting together can real change happen. Don't forget to subscribe to follow more inspiring stories that help each of us grow stronger and more aware in life. This story is not only Lena's voice, but a reminder to us all. Never let prejudice blind the truth, and never lose faith in justice and in yourself. Thank you for taking the time to follow my channel. Your support and interest are powerful motivations that drive me to continue producing meaningful, high-quality content. In the days ahead, I'll bring you even more compelling stories and sharper perspectives, not just to entertain, but to speak to truths that deserve to be heard. Please keep watching, sharing, and spreading the message, because this journey always has room for those who believe in truth and human worth. Thank you so much.